In 1513, an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis drew a map. On it, he sketched the coastline of South America with startling accuracy, the curve of Brazil, the islands of the Caribbean, the shape of the Atlantic. In the margins, he wrote his sources. One of them was a chart drawn by Christopher Columbus himself. A chart that has since been lost. The only surviving trace of it exists on a piece of gazelle skin in a Turkish palace. The Ottomans knew the Americas existed. They had the largest navy in the Mediterranean. They had more ships, more soldiers, and more money than Spain ever dreamed of. And they never went. What if they had? To understand why they didn't, you need to understand what the Ottoman Empire was in the 16th century. Under Suleiman the Magnificent, it stretched across 5 million square kilometers, from the gates of Vienna to the deserts of Yemen, from the coast of Algeria to the mountains of Persia. It had 25 million people. A professional army with elite Janissary infantry and the most advanced artillery on earth. An architect named Sinan was building mosques that still define the Istanbul skyline. This was not a declining power looking for opportunity. This was the most powerful state in the world, and it was busy. The Ottomans looked east. The Indian Ocean spice trade was the prize that mattered: pepper, cinnamon, cloves flowing from India and Southeast Asia through Ottoman-controlled ports. When the Portuguese rounded the Cape of Good Hope and started intercepting those trade routes, the Ottomans responded by sending warships into the Red Sea, the Persian Gulf, and the Indian Ocean. They fought the Portuguese at Dio in 1538. They conquered Aden and Yemen. They sent Piri Reis himself to fight in the Indian Ocean, where he took Muscat from the Portuguese before being ordered back and executed for failing to take Hormuz. They spent their naval energy fighting for the spice trade and controlling the Mediterranean. The Atlantic was someone else's ocean. But here is what they had that Spain did not. A system for governing conquered peoples that was, by the standards of the era, remarkably tolerant. The Ottoman millet system granted religious communities, Christians, Jews, others, internal self-governance. They kept their laws, their schools, their courts, their religious leaders. They paid taxes and stayed loyal. In return, they were left alone. When Spain expelled its Jews in 1492, it was the Ottoman Empire that took them in. Sultan Bayezid II reportedly said of Ferdinand of Spain, "How can you call him wise, a king who impoverishes his own land and enriches mine?" Now imagine this system applied to the Americas instead of the encomienda. The Spanish forced indigenous peoples into labor camps. They melted down gold artifacts. They burned codices. They made conversion to Christianity mandatory on pain of death. The Inquisition followed the conquistadors across the Atlantic. Ottoman colonization would not have looked like this. Not because the Ottomans were saints, they extracted tribute, suppressed rebellions, and took children from Christian families through the Devshirme levy. But their model of empire was fundamentally different. They did not need to remake conquered peoples in their own image. They needed them to pay taxes and provide soldiers. The Aztec tribute system, where vassal states paid regular levies to a central authority, would have been immediately recognizable to Ottoman administrators. It was essentially the same model. But none of this changes the biology. Smallpox does not care who carries it. Ottoman sailors would have brought the same diseases that Spanish sailors did. The catastrophic population collapse, 90% mortality across the indigenous Americas, would have happened regardless of who arrived first. Gunpowder does not cause plague. Tolerance does not cure it. The demographic apocalypse was baked into the moment of contact between the old world and the new. What changes is everything that comes after. If the Ottomans control American gold and silver instead of Spain, the entire financial architecture of 16th century Europe collapses before it begins. Spain funded its wars against the Ottomans, against the Protestants, against the Dutch, against England, all with American silver. Take that away and the Habsburg dynasty is a regional power, not a global one. The Protestant Reformation still happens. Luther's objections to the Catholic Church were theological, not financial. But the wars of religion that tore Europe apart for a century were funded by New World wealth. Without that funding, Catholic Spain cannot wage the wars that defined European power for generations. Meanwhile, an Ottoman Empire enriched by American resources becomes even more dominant. The Siege of Vienna in 1529, which the Ottomans narrowly lost in our timeline, succeeds. Central Europe falls under Ottoman influence. The balance of power between Christianity and Islam tilts in a direction that Europe spent 5 centuries trying to prevent. And in the Americas, the story is different too. Not better. Not a paradise. But different. Cities built with Islamic architectural influence alongside indigenous traditions. The call to prayer echoing across the Valley of Mexico. Trade networks connecting Tenochtitlan to Istanbul to Cairo to Timbuktu across an Ottoman-controlled Atlantic. Piri Reis drew the map. He had Columbus's chart. He knew what was out there. The Ottoman state had the ships, the money, the military power, and a system of governance better suited to managing diverse populations than anything Spain possessed. They just looked in the wrong direction. One decision, east instead of west, and the modern world would be unrecognizable.